GMs for Hire.
Welcome back to another episode of GMs for Hire. I am Jamil. With me is RJ. You know what's going on. We're talking college football. This is our third installment of our college football series. And as RJ, you can see what RJ did. He went horns down, which is going to be legal this year. But we're talking about the Big 12. Will the horns be up or will they be down this season? We don't know. They have a new man in charge. And you know what? Let's just get right into it. Let's talk about Texas. Let's just start off with a bang. The Horns, will they be back? Steve Sarkisian is a head coach again. He was head coach at USC. Then he had some things go down. He left, became an analyst at Alabama, became their offensive coordinator, and he's had their offense very, very good the last few seasons. He is now the head man in Austin. RJ, how do you feel about that move?
That is a absolute home run hire for the Texas Longhorns. I love Steve Sarkisian at Texas. I think that is going to be a great fit. I think this is a step in the right direction for Texas in them trying to actually become back. I think this is absolutely the best hire they could have possibly made. I remember back when they hired him, it was kind of a surprise deal. You know, all the dominoes had kind of fallen. We thought we knew, Tom Herman will be back, thought everything was kind of calm. And then I remember I was on my way to Miami for the Orange Bowl and my phone started blowing up saying that Steve Sarkisian was going to Texas. It's a big deal. He's a great coach. I think he could have done great things at USC. Obviously, there was some other things that happened there. He did a great job at Washington, did a great job at Alabama. I think Steve Sarkisian is going to come in and absolutely turn this Texas program around. This program has been mediocre at best the last few years. They've had a couple decent years, but Tom Herman never really got them to where they need to be. I think Steve Sarkisian can. Now, in Steve Sarkisian's past, I believe he has never had a running back get less than 1,000 yards in a season, something like that. I feel like he said that at Media Days last week. I should have looked that stat up if I was going to sit here and say it, but he said that at Media Days a couple weeks ago. And with Bijan Robinson on this roster, they are about to hit the ground running, literally. This Texas team is going to run the ball a ton. They're obviously going to have a new quarterback this year with Sam Ehlinger moving on. I think it's going to be a great fit with Steve Sarkisian, this running group. I can't wait to see what we see out of Texas this year.
Yeah, I definitely agree that this was a good hire. There's absolutely no reason that Texas should be as bad as they were over the past few seasons when Charlie Strong was the coach and when Tom Herman was the coach. When you're in such a rich land of football, you are Texas. When you are the name brand of the state in Texas, there's no reason why you shouldn't be winning football games. In my opinion, you have the players. You just got to put the right system in place. You mentioned Bijan Robinson. He's going to be great. So he's also got transferring Keelan Robinson from Alabama. They're probably the number 2 back on this team that he's going to get his fair share of touches too. And you hit the nail on the head. New quarterback in Sam Ehlinger. We could talk about the running game all they want, but over at Alabama, he made Mac Jones into a first-round pick. He also had a couple over decent quarterbacks in Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa in his time at Alabama. And the question is now, what does Texas do at the quarterback position? You're going to have 2 young guys, either Casey Thompson or Hudson Card. We don't know who's going to win the battle yet, but it's going to be 2 young, unproven quarterbacks. And we'll see if they can step into their reins. It's never easy to play quarterback in high Division I football, especially when you're at a school like Texas where you're going to be under the radar. You're going to be scrutinized. It's a hard place to play. And now you're coming up. Sam Ehlinger, honestly, was one of the better quarterbacks in their school history, if you ask me. He's probably the best quarterback they've had since Colt McCoy. So
absolutely
hard footsteps to follow. It's going to be hard, but I don't know who's going to win the battle, but whoever does, it's going to be a tough go for them to run that offense and to get this Texas team back where they want to be.
Absolutely. You are put under a huge microscope when you are the quarterback at the University of Texas.
We'll see whoever can outlast that pressure, but their biggest rival, the Oklahoma Sooners, they got a quarterback that's all the rage now in college football, Spencer Rattler. A lot of people have him as potential number 1 overall quarterback heading into this season to go into the NFL. It's really between him and your boy Sam Howell, I think. We've talked about that a bunch on this show. Spencer Rattler, he was okay to start the season. He ended the season really well for Oklahoma. This is a team that's won, I think, 6 or 7 straight Big 12 titles. It's going to be hard to slow them down this year. Lincoln Riley has a train going over there. He's got a lot of good players. They bring in Eric Gray as a transfer for a running back. They have a freshman coming in, Loot Runner Mario. They got Kennedy Brooks coming back also to run the football. This team is absolutely loaded on offense. And Alex Grinch has the defense playing a lot better than it was the past few seasons. Oklahoma's been a machine, and I think they're going to keep on rolling. How do you feel about the Sooners?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Alex Grinch, because when we think of Oklahoma football, we know all about Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, D.D. Westbrook, CeeDee Lamb, all these guys. Like, their offense is always just loaded. They're a scoring machine. They're going to hang 40 on your favorite defense and not even think twice about it. But what Alex Grinch has brought to this program the last couple years, the Oklahoma Sooners have a defense, and they have a very good one. And now this is a very, very balanced football team, offensively and defensively. That is something we haven't seen from Oklahoma. Every time they've made the playoffs, it was because their offense was out here hanging 40 and they were giving up 35. That won't be the case this year, I don't think. Speaking of the playoff, however, I do think, not trying to give away the rest of our video here, I do think Oklahoma wins the conference and makes it to the playoff. They have to win a playoff game. There is no more, oh, we had a good season, made it to the playoff, tough loss. No. There's no more of that. They are what, 0-4, I think? Yeah, they lost to Clemson. Yeah. They lost to Bama, lost to LSU. At some point, Oklahoma's got to get a dub, and they've got to find a way to win a playoff game. Now, them being more balanced offensively and defensively, I think that's going to help a ton. I absolutely think they can win a playoff game this year when you have a top 2 quarterback in the country in Spencer Rattler. Great defense, great running game. You mentioned like 3 or 4 guys that are going to tote the rock for them. This team is dangerous, but I want to see if they're going to be dangerous in January, or are they going to lose by 20 to whoever wins the SEC?
Yeah, you mentioned, they've struggled in the playoffs. They haven't played Bama yet in the playoffs, but I think this year there's a good chance they do. I think this is the first season where you look at Oklahoma fans and they're saying this team is, I think it's national title or bust for this team, because they, like you said, they're so well balanced. Alex Grinch, this is honestly probably last season they're going to have him. I don't see how he doesn't get a head coaching job after this season. So you look around the nation, you got a whole bunch of teams breaking in young freshman quarterbacks. You have arguably the best quarterback in college football. You have all the weapons. You have the defense. Now let's put up or shut up. You got to be able to beat these teams when they're not at their highest peak. And I think it's time, I think a lot of their fans are expecting them to win the Big 12 and to go to the playoffs and to win playoff games and to play for national championship this season.
Absolutely. I was trying to think of the games. I knew they had lost 4.
Yeah, it was Clemson, Georgia, LSU.
They lost to Clemson in 2015. Deshaun, the first year. They lost to Georgia in that epic Rose Bowl.
Great game.
They lost to Alabama when it was Kyler versus Tua down in Miami, where they literally could not stop Alabama. I don't think they got to stop all game, honestly. And then they gave up 60 to LSU.
That was a bad run.
Like 63 points to LSU. Come on.
Yeah, that was a bad run. And honestly, I think that was the weakest Oklahoma team because their defense wasn't that good. And honestly, if we're going to be honest, Jalen Hurts is great and all, but it's probably the worst of the quarterbacks they've had. Lincoln Riley changed the whole offense. They weren't throwing the ball downfield nearly as much as they were with Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. And it's no disrespect to Jalen Hurts because Jalen Hurts was the best runner out of all of them. He did things the other ones couldn't. The offense was different, but I think this season we're going to see a super explosive offense out of this team this season. I think Spencer's going to come out early. He's going to uncork the ball. They're going to throw the ball over. They're going to be able to run the ball. That being able to run the ball as much as they're going to be able to, along with the weapons they have, I think is going to make Lincoln Riley in heaven. He's going to be getting his bag this year.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Well, moving on to probably the team that's probably going to challenge them the most this season is a team in Little Old Ames, Iowa, the Iowa State Cyclones. They're coming off their best season ever. They finished in the top 10 at the end of the season. They have a very, very good head coach in Matt Campbell. They have a very, very underrated team. They got a senior quarterback in Brock Purdy. They have one of the best running backs in the nation in Breece Hall. They're bringing back a plethora of other offensive players. They got Charlie Kohler, the tight end. They got the rest receiver, Xavier Hutchinson, coming back. And their defense is also loaded. They're bringing back almost everything. They're bringing back a lot of players on this football team. Expectations are high in Iowa State. This is probably the best team they've put on the field in their school's history. And they're looking to win the Big 12 this season.
Absolutely. This is definitely the biggest challenger for Oklahoma. Problem is, Iowa State, they got them last year. You know, they played Oklahoma twice.
They got them early.
It seems like Iowa State has been better in the regular season against Oklahoma, but when it comes time to the championship game, Oklahoma just turns on a different gear there. I don't get it. But Iowa State, I think they need to go all in on this season. They need to absolutely leave nothing to be, talked about with the committee. Go out there, leave nothing on the table. Brock Purdy won't be back. Breece Hall probably won't be back. They're going to go make some money in the NFL. And honestly, I know Matt Campbell loves Ames, Iowa. I know he loves Iowa State. He loves the program. He has built this program. But at some point, he's going to move on and go to a bigger program. There's a certain school in the Big Ten that hates their head coach but can't get rid of him. Matt Campbell would be a great fit in Ann Arbor. Matt Campbell is going to move on, I believe, at the end of this year. I know he's not going to tell the media that because he wants to recruit. He wants the fans to be happy and all that. But at some point, you have to understand you are Iowa State, not Ohio State. So I think they need to go all in on this year. Brock Purdy, Breece Hall, Matt Campbell, you might not have any of those guys next year. You've got a great team this year. You got to beat Oklahoma. That's just facts. Like everyone else, yeah, you got to win all your games. I get it. It's college football. But you got to circle that Oklahoma game, and that's the game that you absolutely have to win. You've got to go all in on this season. I mean, go for it on fourth downs and close games. Go for 2 if you're down by, 6, whatever you got to do. This Iowa State team needs to go all in on 2021.
Yeah, this is definitely the best chance Iowa State has had a Big 12 title at huge national success. And like you mentioned, the writing could be on the wall for Campbell. You mentioned, can it get any better from here? You have the best nucleus of talent you've had. Other big time college programs are definitely calling you. The NFL is calling you. I think a lot of people are surprised he's been here this long. This very well might be it for him, but this is a heck of a team they put together in Iowa State. And I think these two teams are on a collision course to see each other twice this season, once in Oklahoma, once in Dallas for the Big 12 title game. There's a couple other good teams in this conference we're going to hit on, but I think Oklahoma and Iowa State are definitely the most complete, and they're going to have to get knocked off in some other fashion by some of these other teams to prevent that from happening. And speaking of that, we're going to hit another team. We're going to go down to Texas to another little school, not in a small city, but a little school, Texas Christian, the TCU Horned Frogs, led by Gary Patterson. This is a team that you never can get them right. They're either going to be really, really good or they're going to be very, very disappointing. It seems like they're either putting up a high win season or a low win season. They haven't finished ranked in the past few seasons, but Gary Patterson is one of the most underrated head coaches in the country, one of the best defensive coaches in the country. They're going to put together another good defense this year. And on offense, they're going to be carried by Max Duggan. He's going to have a breakout season. I think he has the capability to do it. They got a running back in Zach Evans. They got some big receivers on the outside. Dugan's got to put it all together, though, for this Horned Frogs team to go where they want to go.
I'm glad we hit on TCU next because I believe with all the hype around Oklahoma, all the hype around Iowa State, there's always hype around Texas. TCU is absolutely the dark horse team that can win the Big 12. I don't mean just upset a team and, screw the Big 12 out of making the playoff. I mean TCU can actually win the Big 12. And it's because of the 2 guys that you mentioned. Well, the 3 if you count Gary Patterson. Max Duggan and Zach Evans. That is going to end up being one of the best quarterback and running back duos in the entire country this year. TCU, absolutely, I agree with what you said. When they get a lot of hype in the preseason, they fall flat on their face. When you don't talk about them, they're amazing and they're in the top 10. They are the Big 12's version of Auburn. They literally do the same thing Auburn does every year. It's ridiculous. I really think TCU, they have a shot to actually win the Big 12 this year. This team is going to be very good. Gary Patterson, one of the most underrated head coaches, like you mentioned. I really think this team is going to surprise a lot of people this year.
Well, yeah, TCU, they rarely ever get blown out. They always play the top teams really close. They own Texas. I think they're undefeated versus Texas since they joined the Big 12, to be honest. And if they're not, they've lost one time. Texas has struggled very, very hard to beat this team. They're coming in. They have one of the best corner duos in the whole nation with Noah Daniels and Trevarius Hodges Tomlinson, LT's son. He's over there at corner. He's going to make himself a lot of money in the NFL. This is a team I agree with you. I think they can shock some people. They just got to be able to score points consistently. If they can score consistently, we know Duggan can do it on the ground. We've seen him being one of the better running quarterbacks in the country. If he can just get it together throwing wise, watch out. The Horned Frogs could make some noise. I definitely agree with you. Moving on over to another team, we're going to hit the Oklahoma State Cowboys, the Pokes. This is another team, they're always hanging around. They lost some talent, though. Mike Gundy's going to have to work hard to get it right. Spencer Saunders comes back at quarterback. It's always good to bring quarterback back. They lose Tylen Wallace on the outside, one of the best receivers in the country from last season. And they lose Chuba Hubbard, one of the better running backs 2 years ago. We struggled last season with injuries. He was in and out of the lineup, but gone are those two. And now it's just Saunders by himself. He struggled with some turnovers. He's got to turn around, and he's another quarterback that's going to have to get right. Like we mentioned with Duggan, Saunders is going to have to get right himself. What do you see about the Pokes this season?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is all going to fall on Spencer Sanders' shoulders. Losing Chuba Hubbard, losing Tylen Wallace. They also lost Dylan Stoner, who I'm pretty sure played there for like 10 years. That dude, literally, I watched him, 2016? He played with Mason Rudolph, and he's just now gone. Like, I don't know how he kept being eligible, but Dylan Stoner, after a 15-year career at Oklahoma State, he finally moved on. So yeah, you're right. They're going to have to break in a ton of new weapons. Mike Gundy, though, that's what he does there. I mean, this guy is one of the best offensive coaches in the entire country. It seems like they're never awful. This team probably isn't going to compete for the Big 12 championship this year, but they're also not going to go 3-9. Oklahoma State's just not that program. What I want to hit on, and it's actually something that we're going to talk about in a different video. There's all this talk about the Oklahoma and Texas, they're moving to the SEC. A lot of people think it's going to be official in 2025, which I know is when they signed, papers for all that. But the lawyers are going to get involved. And there's actually a very good chance that Texas and Oklahoma are in the SEC next year. So you know what that tells me? That tells me Oklahoma State, again, go all in. You have to win Bedlam this year. This could be the last time you play the Oklahoma Sooners for, I don't know, the foreseeable future. I mean, Texas and Texas A&M haven't played in like 10 years. So if you can get one last shot to beat your rival, which they've owned you. I mean, Oklahoma has absolutely just owned Oklahoma State. If you can just get one this year, especially ruin Oklahoma's national title hopes and win, knowing you're not going to play them again for a while, that would be an absolute huge win for Mike Gundy and that program. So I think they need to circle Bedlam, and I think they need to just go all in. Doesn't matter if they win a single game all year. They need to win Bedlam this year.
Yeah, we'll see about that. It's definitely harder than it looks to beat a Lincoln Riley-led offense. You mentioned that this could be the last time they play for the foreseeable future. I hope you're wrong on that. I hope we get.
So do I. Yeah, I hope I'm wrong too.
I hope the rivalry stay intact, man. I think that's the one thing we're gonna miss. I don't want to just go way off topic. I think that's the one thing we're gonna miss. You mentioned Texas A&M. I don't know the parameters about those two schools and the ADs and the contracts. I just feel like those two teams don't want to play each other, to be honest. I feel like one team does, one team doesn't, because I feel like they would have played by now. You can see Texas A&M doesn't want Texas to join the SEC. So there's definitely some stuff going on over there, but I definitely hope Bedlam stays. Hope all the rivalries stay. But it's definitely going to be hard for them to beat Oklahoma. I think they're going to have a uphill battle in the Big 12. I think they'll finish middle of the pack, though. But moving on the conference, we're going to go all the way up north to Country Roads, Take Me Home. Talk about West Virginia, the Mountaineers. This is a team, they've got a new coach in Neil Brown ever since Gary Holgerson left. They've been a different team. They haven't been the offensive force that they were in those times. But Neil Brown's come in. They've progressed. They had a decent season last year. They have a dominant running back in Letty Brown, one of the better running backs in the country, if you ask me. But they have a good defense. They lost a lot of talent off that defense, though, through the transfer portal and the NFL and all that good stuff. But I think all hopes on this team are on Jared Dodger's shoulders. I think he's going to have. I think the story of this conference is going to be quarterback play. Can these quarterbacks improve? You have a lot of quarterbacks that played before. They're going to have to become better versions of themselves for their teams to elevate. And I think Dodge is one of those guys as well for the Mountaineers.
Absolutely. I agree. He's going to have to carry this team because last year, West Virginia was literally atrocious offensively last year. So they've got to improve on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, having a dominant running back helps, but they've really got to put it all together. That's another team that's dealing with a lot of distractions off the field right now. Are they going to be in the Big 12 much longer? You know, all that. Again, separate video for that. But this is a team that needs to progress more under Neil Brown. I think he's a fine coach. What he did at, what was it, Troy, I believe? Mm-hmm. He's a good coach. We know he can do it. Obviously, I don't think West Virginia was expecting Dana Holgorsen to leave when he did. So to get a good hire like Neil Brown, great for West Virginia, but they have got to improve offensively because this team was awful last year.
Yeah, you know, they ran the ball very, very well, but throwing the ball has been inconsistent. Obviously, under Holgorsen, they were throwing the ball around Will Greer. That's the last time we remember a great West Virginia offense. But I think this is a team that, you know, I think they're going to finish the middle of the pack of the conference as well. I think they're going to keep on trucking with Brown. You know, you just got to keep getting better every year before you hit that stride where you get a big season. But like you said, you know, uncertainty within the conference. We'll see what happens with them. Moving on, let's hit on Kansas State in Manhattan, Kansas. This is one of my dark horse teams. I really, really like Skylar Thompson. I think he's one of the better quarterbacks in the conference, but he just can't stay healthy. If the guy can stay healthy, we know he's good running at the ball. He's a pretty decent passer. I think it could be great. They got a great running back in Deuce Vaughn. I think this team is sneaky.
I absolutely agree. I read a stat, and I should have wrote it down, but I didn't. But the differential of when Skylar Thompson is healthy versus when he's not healthy, as far as wins and losses, it is a completely different football team. Skylar Thompson absolutely is going to determine what Kansas State football is this year. Of course, the past 2 years, Kansas State is at Oklahoma's number. That's been the team that's given Oklahoma the fits. So if Skylar Thompson can stay healthy, stud running back in Deuce Vaughn. If your name is Deuce, you're probably going to be a stud. And this guy is absolutely a stud. The Big 12, quietly, a ton of great running backs in this conference. This might be the best conference of running backs in the country. It is absolutely loaded this year. But, yeah, you mentioned Skylar Thompson. If he can stay healthy, Deuce Vaughn, that is definitely another team right there with TCU and Texas that are going to be right behind Oklahoma and Iowa State, I believe. But they can definitely make some noise and upset one of the other teams.
Yeah, Skylar can just stay healthy, man. Put a whole season together. I'd be interested to see what this Wildcat team can do. But I think we agree that they're going to be a decent little team if he can stay healthy. And going back down to Texas, let's talk about the Baylor Bears. This is a team that was hit very, very hard last season by COVID. On top of that, they got a new coach, Dave Aranda, came over from LSU. I think this team that's definitely going to improve. They have a lot of talent on the outside and that running back, but we don't know who's going to play quarterback for this team. I think that's going to be a big topic of discussion. We have to see who wins the starting job over there. On the defense side of the ball, they weren't that good last year, but we all know Dave Aranda is going to get that team a lot better this season, I think.
Absolutely. When you have a coach that's as good as Dave Aranda, I mean, he has the credibility. Every stop he's been at, he's been a great coach. You mentioned LSU. Dave Aranda is absolutely a good football coach. I have no doubts he's going to put together something special at Baylor. Now, I don't know that they're going to, you know, do what Matt Rule did a couple years ago and challenge for, you know, the Big 12 championship and a playoff spot. But Dave Aranda is the right guy to lead this program. They are going to get some wins. They are going to beat a team that they shouldn't. And everyone's going to open their eyes and be like, oh, remember Dave Aranda at LSU? He's at Baylor now, and he's actually doing a really good job.
Yes, you know, this is interesting job / school right now. You know, we all know they had the problems in the past, and they dealt with what they dealt with. Matt Rule came in, rebuilded them. Matt Rule leaves, and, you know, it's not starting over again, but it's hard that, you know, he was building such a culture there. You know, you got to pick up the pieces and to keep it going. You know, it's not the easiest thing to do, but I think Aranda's going to come in there. I was surprised he took the job, but I think he's going to end up turning this team around. Just got to give him the time. Staying within the state, let's go over to Lubbock, Texas Tech. Head coach Matt Wells, I think he could be the coach in the conference on the hot seat. The Red Raiders have not been very, very good the past few seasons. Their offense has gone downhill since Cliff Kingsbury has departed. Now he's with the Arizona Cardinals, still doing his thing. And he's just 8-14 since coming over from Utah State. We'll see what they do this season. They bring back a couple interesting players. They bring back Jorick Thompson, another good running back we mentioned. Eric Azukima comes over at receiver. He's staying in there. And they got an interesting quarterback transfer in Tyler Slaw from Oregon. I don't know how he's going to come in and do. They lost Bowman. They bring in Slav. I think he was pretty decent at Oregon. He had his problems there. He came over at Texas Tech. We'll see if he can bounce back. How do you feel about the Red Raiders?
This team, let's not forget, Texas Tech fired Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff Kingsbury got fired by Texas Tech and then was going to immediately upgrade and go to USC, and then upgraded even more and became a head coach in the NFL. I don't obviously hindsight's 2020. I didn't know what Texas Tech was thinking back then. I still don't know what they're thinking. They have been awful. Last year, the Texas Tech Red Raiders were 76th in total QBR. QBR from a school that had Graham Harrell, a school that had Patrick Mahomes. Alan Bowman was slinging it. This team was 76th in QBR last year. For Texas Tech, that is absolutely unacceptable. That would have never happened under Cliff Kingsbury, but now it's happening. And I absolutely agree with you. He's going to be on the hot seat, and I don't know how he can survive this season.
I'm glad you mentioned Cliff Kingsbury. This goes back to a thing me and you talked about. It's okay, cool, go ahead and buy your coach, but who are you going to get?
Exactly.
Cliff Kingsbury, he was under the hot seat because they weren't winning enough games, but I don't know.
It's Texas Tech.
You were.
When have you ever won games? Other than when Graham Harrell and Michael Crabtree were there, when has Texas Tech ever won 10 football games? Seriously. Here's my thing. I get it. Everyone has an ego. Everyone wants to be the best. But at some point, you have to understand who you are. Texas Tech is not Texas. They are not Oklahoma. You should be happy going 7-5, 8-4, and maybe an occasional 9-3 shock the world. That's who you are. You get rid of Cliff Kingsbury, who was a great coach, and now you're down here trying to make sure you don't finish behind Kansas for dead last. Texas Tech deserves this. I'm sorry. If there's Red Raider fans watching this, you can be pissed off all you want. What they did by firing Cliff Kingsbury was a total slap in the face to their own program. And that's honestly the biggest thing about college football that makes me mad is these teams don't understand who they are.
The crazy thing about it is, I see why they got rid of him because the results on the field were what they wanted. But at the same token, if you look at the NFL, all the buzz is you want to get these young up-and-coming offensive people. If you touch Sean McVay's pen, you're getting a job. If you look at the Big 12 on its own, Lincoln Riley came in and he stunned the college football world with his offense. You know what Lincoln Riley did? You know what they did at Oklahoma? They didn't have the best defense. They got a very, very good D coordinator in Alex Grinch, and look what happened. I feel like if Texas Tech would have just stayed the course, putting up a lot of big points, you have one of the best offensive young minds in the game. You just got to get the right D coordinator and get things going. Just get a couple more stops because points never go out of style. Points never go stale. You got to keep scoring points. You just got to find ways to get the stops to complement the points, and they didn't do that, and now they're in a different situation.
Absolutely.
Finishing out the conference, you can guess where we're going with this.
Oof.
Rock Chalk Jayhawk. This isn't basketball. It's football. What do we got to say about this team? You're drinking. I don't know what to say. Let's talk about the Jayhawks.
They don't have Les Miles anymore.
They do not. They are starting over again. Like every 5 years, we're starting over again. This time we go with Lance Leopold from Buffalo. Mac Nation. They have my boy Jared Patterson running that rock. But I don't know too much about him personally. I'm going to be honest. I have to do more research on him. But obviously.
No, you don't. Because he's going to be gone from Kansas in a couple years, and they're going to start over again.
Buffalo was decent the last few seasons. They flirted around the top of the MAC. But I don't know what you're going to do for Kansas. You haven't been good since the early 2000s. You went to the Orange Bowl. You had to keep Talib. After that, it's been downhill. I really don't know.
2007 was good.
I don't know what to do if you're Kansas, though, to get the team back right. Because, number one, you're not, as long as you're in this Big 12 conference, you're never going to be upper echelon. Like you said, know your place. Basketball is always going to rule there. So I don't know what you're in. It's hard to get recruits to come there. You're going to be getting 2 or 3 stars. You got to just dip into other places like Florida and Texas to try to get these athletes. And I think this comes down to coaching staff. You got to be able to get 1, 2, and 3-star guys and mold them into 4 or 5-star guys. Like it starts a quarterback. They haven't had a good quarterback in God knows how long.
Ever.
It's going to be a process. You're going to have patience if you're Kansas.
A lot of patience. I guess if you're the new head coach at Kansas, go talk to Mark Stoops at Kentucky. Figure out you're at a school where football is not your first priority. It is absolutely basketball. So how do you survive at a program that doesn't really care about football?
And
it's got to be tough to walk into a situation like that. It has to be.
It's even easier at Kentucky because you're in the South. Like
football,
people still like your school is basketball, but football is king in the South. Whereas I don't know anybody from Kansas. I don't know about Kansas. I hope Kansas people come in the comments. What is football in Kansas? Like where does it rank in sports? I don't know. And like you mentioned, it's got to be hard going to a place where basketball is king and like football. I don't know what football is in Kansas. Like I said, where it might not even be the second sport.
Yeah. Go talk to David Cutcliffe at Duke then, because they got basketball and they got lacrosse. Football might be like 3rd or 4th on the list at Duke, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a tough job at Kansas. I'm interested to see what happens. I want them to get decent though, because it'll just be good. It's good to see when schools that aren't necessarily supposed to be good get good, and little programs rise up to the occasion. So I wish him all the best of luck. Honestly, I hope Kansas fans comment on this and give us some intellect. Man, I want to talk to some Kansas fans. Like, how do you feel about the team? Like, do you care about football? How much are y'all invested in? I'm honestly interested, to be completely honest. I want to talk to some Kansas fans, see like what's up. Like, what do you guys want to see from this coaching staff? What do you want to see from the school to really get this football team back?
Yeah, no, I agree. I'd be interested to see what some Kansas fans had to say.
Yeah, so please, Kansas fans, drop some comments on us. Find us on Twitter, Instagram. I really want to talk to you guys and see what you guys want from the program. I'd be very interested to talk about that. Well, we've gone through all the teams, and we've already hinted at what we think is going to finish in this conference. So far during our conference videos, we've been a little cliche of who we think is going to end up in the conference championship games. The ACC, we were the Big Ten. Me and RJ had some differences, but I think we're going to be on the same page here in the Big 12. For me personally, I don't think Texas is there yet. I think Steve Sarkisian is going to come in. I think they're going to have 2 young quarterbacks, and I don't think they're going to be able to get to the Big 12 championship game. I think they're going to be good. I think TCU is also going to be good, but at the end of the day, I don't know if Duggan's going to have enough improvement to lead them back all the way to Dallas for the Big 12 title game. And I think we're on a collision course for a rematch this season. I think we're going to see the same game twice in Iowa State and Oklahoma. I think these 2 teams are by far the 2 best teams in the conference. They're returning the most talent. They have the best coaching, I think. And I think they're going to put it together. And we're going to see these teams play twice this season.
Absolutely. I actually agree with you 100% on that. I think Texas and TCU are sitting there at 3rd and 4th. I think they're close. They're on their way. And next year, I'll be really interested to see them. But yeah, I think we're going to get Oklahoma versus Iowa State this year. I think we're going to get them twice. And I think Oklahoma's going to win both games. I think they're going to win in the regular season. And then I think Oklahoma wins the Big 12 championship. Now, do they go undefeated? I don't know, probably. But there are some, tricky games. The Big 12 can be tricky. But I do think when they are playing the best team, which is going to be Iowa State, Oklahoma's going to rise to the occasion and let everybody know, hey, we still run the conference. Y'all still got to catch up to us.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that assessment. I think it's going to be 2 good games. But at the end of the day, I think Oklahoma's just going to have a little bit too much. I honestly think Rattler's going to step up this season. I think he has to for this team to go where they want to. He ended the season strong, but I think he's got to put it all together. And he's got to show, these NFL guys that he's ready to become the number 1 pick. We all know he has the arm talent, but will he have the mental to stay within himself when things go tough, to really improve himself and to not go off the deep end and start throwing more turnovers and stuff? Because, we had a little bit of a turnover problem at sometimes last year. We saw him get benched in the Red River rivalry. Then he came back and he was just fine after that. So, he's just a young guy. I think he's going to step up this season and be big for them, though.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Well, cover the whole conference from top to bottom. Let's talk about some other storylines in the conference that we're interested in seeing this season. We talked about Matt Campbell. How do you think things end with him this season after the season at Iowa State? Do you think he goes to the NFL? You think he goes to another college team, or you think he stays put in Ames?
I don't think he stays in Ames. As much as he can sit there and say that he loves Ames and loves the program, he's going to end up leaving. Now, because he's such a great young coach, I want to see him stay in college football. I don't want to lose him to the NFL. I would love for him to take the Michigan job. I would love to see what he can do at a big program like that with a lot of hype, a lot of pressure. And honestly, they got to make it a rivalry with them and Ohio State because they're just getting smoked every year. So I want Matt Campbell to stay in college football. I do think he leads Iowa State. Where he goes, if it's not Michigan, I don't know. It's probably the NFL, but I would hope he goes to Michigan.
Yeah, that would definitely be a good fit. I'm pretty sure he's a Midwest guy up there, and I think that's why he hasn't gone for some other jobs, or I think that's like what the rumors are with him. You mentioned you want to see him stay in college football. We really haven't seen a lot of high-level college football coaches head to the NFL recently.
No, not recently.
Hasn't really been, unless you want to count Urban Meyer, but he hasn't coached in a couple years. It's definitely a video we can talk about later on about why that isn't happening. I know the NFL would love to get their hands on Lincoln Riley, but that's a story for another day with them. We obviously have some good quarterbacks in this conference. I think Spencer Rattler is the best quarterback in the conference right now. Who are some of the other guys looking at quarterback in this conference?
Well, I think we hit on all of them. Obviously, Spencer Rattler is one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. Brock Purdy, obviously, he's going to be the guy that's going to lead Iowa State this year, try to get them to where they need to be. We mentioned Skylar Thompson. If he's healthy, Kansas State is dangerous. Max Duggan, very good. We just got to put it together. But I will be interested to see how Spencer Sanders does this year, not having Chuba Hubbard, not having Tylen Wallace, and not having Dylan Stoner. He's going to have all this new around him. Can Mike Gundy calm him down and get everyone else around him to step up?
Yeah, that was actually my exact top 5 as well. I think for Saunders, you're the guy now. Everybody's looking at you. You lost those guys that we mentioned, so now all eyes are on you. You got to be able to step up and lead these guys, these younger guys, because now you're an older guy, and I think that's a big transition in college sports where you go from that senior to that sophomore to junior level, and all of a sudden you're the guy looking around. When your playmakers leave, you got to step up, kind of like how your boy Sam Miles got to be this year. He lost all his guys. He got to step up this season and prove he is that guy. 2 wild cards I like in this conference at quarterback. I want to see what Sloffs does at Texas Tech. He left Oregon. He was pretty decent there last year. Oregon wasn't bad at all.
Yeah.
I want to see if he can bounce back at Texas Tech. And we mentioned that team. They got to win some games. Their coach could get canned. And whoever starts at Texas is very, very, very interesting to me. Both young guys are good, but, we mentioned the Texas team is going to be, for them to come back, they got to be able to throw the ball. And I don't know which one they're going to pick, but whoever they pick is going to have a lot of pressure on them. And I think they're going to be able to deliver. I think this offense is going to be very, very interesting to watch. And I think Texas, if they're still in the Big 12 next year, will definitely give Oklahoma a run for their money in a year.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Also, if we want to look at some other players in the conference on who we're looking at, I mentioned it earlier. This league is absolutely the best league in college football when it comes to the running back position, because I've got 5 names right here that are just ridiculous. When you've got Bijan Robinson at Texas, he's going to be one of the best running backs in the country this year. Breece Hall is a preseason Heisman candidate because of what he's done at Iowa State. You've got Deuce Vaughn at Kansas State. We mentioned him. Zach Evans, everybody forgot about him. He was a very, very highly ranked high school prospect.
He might have been the number 1 running back. He was up there.
I
he was definitely
believe he was. I believe he was. And everybody thought he was going to go to Georgia or something like that. He ends up at TCU. Last year, he was very quiet. I don't expect him to be quiet this year. I think Zach Evans is going to be the breakout player of the Big 12. And Kennedy Brooks, Oklahoma. We know all about Spencer Rattler, but they're going to run the ball. And Kennedy Brooks is going to be the guy to balance that offense out and take them to the playoff.
Yeah, I definitely agree with some of those names you just hit on. I was glad you mentioned, some other players. And, I'm glad you mentioned the running backs. Because looking at it, this is the deepest running back conference in the nation. Probably almost every team has a guy that can tote the rock. Some guys didn't even name. Texas Tech has Sedoric Thompson. He was good last year. Baylor has Ebner. He was pretty good last year. West Virginia has Letty Brown. He was one of the better running backs in the whole country last year. So this is a very, very deep crop of running backs. And I think those guys, Oklahoma, Gray and Brooks. I think Brooks is gonna be a big bounce back. A guy that didn't play last season. I think a lot of people forgot about him, and I think a lot of people didn't watch Tennessee football to watch Gray play. I think they're gonna be the best duo in the conference for sure. And Zach Evans, I agree with you, is gonna be a big breakout. And then John Robinson could very well end up being the best player in the conference. That's not a quarterback.
Yeah, no, I literally agree with all of that. This conference, as far as the quarterback and the running back positions, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Well, the Big 12 is going to be a tight race in the middle. We think there's going to be two teams dominating at the top. We appreciate you guys for watching this video. Stay in touch with us as we continue to roll out these conference previews. This was the Big 12 for Jamil. That was RJ. Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.